They told me I should live less comfortably. But the truth is simpler. They just wanted to live more comfortably at my expense. And the night they uninvited me from my own son's dinner, I finally understood that comfort wasn't the problem. Respect was. I was standing in front of Daniel's house in the soft evening light of the upscale Hillsborough neighborhood, smoothing the sleeves of my cardigan like a nervous girl. Not a 72-year-old woman who'd spent a lifetime keeping things together. He'd asked me to come at 7 sharp for a small family dinner. His words, not mine. I've even baked the lemon drizzle cake he loved as a child, the only recipe he ever asked me to keep safe. But the moment I stepped onto the flagstone porch, the door opened just a crack. Sarah's face appeared first. Her smile was thin, polite, the way a concierge greets someone to whom she has nothing to offer. "Oh, Helen," she said, "I think Daniel forgot to tell you. Tonight's not ideal." Before I could answer, Daniel pushed forward. My son, taller than me, broader, wearing that Swiss watch I had paid for, though he'd long stopped remembering things like that. "Mom," he started, voice low, "we're keeping tonight small, just a few colleagues and clients. It might be, uncomfortable for you." There was a strange pause then, as if even he heard what he'd just said. Uncomfortable for me? In my son's home? The home I'd funded the down payment for? The home they regularly reminded me I should be grateful to visit? I held the cake tin closer to my chest, the warm smell of lemon and sugar rising between us. "I thought you invited me," I said quietly. "I know," he replied, eyes darting anywhere but at mine. "But Sarah feels, well, the group tonight is a bit elevated." Elevated. As if I were dirt under their polished Italian loafers. Sarah folded her arms, tilting her chin in that practiced way of hers, the one that said she believed she'd risen above her own modest beginnings long before they ever bought this house. "It's just better if you skip this one. You know how image works in Daniel's field." I felt something in my chest, not breaking, not yet, but shifting. A quiet cracking like an old floorboard under too much weight. They didn't want me inside. Me, who had covered their emergencies, their daughter Chloe's private school tuition, their late mortgage payments, their vacations to Tuscany, their little unexpected expenses. Me, who still paid half of what they called their necessary lifestyle adjustments. I took one slow breath, steady as I could. "I see." The cake tin felt heavy in my hands, suddenly foolish. I didn't offer it. I didn't hand it over to be forgotten in some corner of their stainless steel chef's kitchen. I simply stepped back. Daniel exhaled like I'd solved a problem for him. "We'll do another dinner soon, something simpler." Simpler, meaning me. Sarah added, "Yes, something more appropriate." There it was, the word appropriate, as if I were an outdated piece of furniture they didn't know what to do with. "Well," I said, my voice remarkably steady, "enjoy your evening." I turned before they could answer, walked back down the manicured path slowly, the way old bones insist on moving. The porch sensor light clicked off behind me before I reached the driveway. Not even a shadow left for me to follow home. In my 10-year-old sedan, I sat for a long moment with the lemon cake on the passenger seat. Cars passed, porch lights came on in other grand houses. Somewhere far away, someone laughed. But not here. Not for me. I started the engine. My hands trembled only once when I realized the truth I had refused to name for years. They didn't just uninvite me from a dinner. They uninvited me from my own place in their lives. Live less comfortably, Sarah once told me with that same thin smile, as if I owed her something, as if my comfort had ever been the problem. Driving home, through the fading evening light, to my modest bungalow in the old Oakwood district, I felt a quiet, unfamiliar certainty settle into me like a stone at the bottom of a lake. If they wanted me out of their comfort, fine. But they had no idea how much of that comfort came from me and how easily it could disappear. When I came home that night, I didn't turn on the lights. I walked through the familiar rooms by memory, the narrow hallway, the little kitchen with its humming refrigerator, the armchair by the window where I'd spent so many evenings mending small tears in other people's clothes and ignoring the larger ones in my own life. The lemon cake was still in my bag. I set it on the counter untouched, the way Daniel had left me untouched on his doorstep. The quiet inside my house felt different tonight. Not peaceful, not lonely, but something sharper. Something that made me pull open the drawer where I kept every important paper of the last 15 years. The drawer stuck. It always did. Groaning like an old woman asked to bend too far, I tugged harder until it gave way and revealed what I already knew was there. The thick folder marked family. A foolish label, really, because the expenses belonged to only one member of this family, me. I lifted the folder out carefully. My hands don't work as smoothly as they once did, but I've always kept myself precise, organized. Even grief over the years, I'd stacked into neat little piles. The first page was an old check copy, $12,000 for Daniel's career transition year. I remembered that. He'd said he needed space, time, air to build something meaningful. I'd given him that money with the belief that he was building a future. I just didn't realize it wouldn't include me. Next page. $800 for Sarah's professional image consultation. I could still hear her voice. It's important for my credibility, Helen. People in our circles judge appearances. Perhaps she was right. She had judged mine often enough. Then came the private school payments, the health insurance top-ups, the car lease payments, the months when an unexpected bill had arrived, always unexpected, always urgent, always requiring me to step in quietly without complaint. I flipped through page after page, a slow parade of numbers marching past my eyes, 127 active payments. I had counted them once out of morbid curiosity, then avoided counting again because the truth had felt too heavy. Mortgage, utilities, insurance, tutoring, subscriptions, gym memberships, even the bi-weekly landscaping service that trimmed their ornamental hedges. I paid for that too. Apparently, even their bushes lived more comfortably than I did. I sat down at the kitchen table, the folder spread open like a confession, and for the first time in years, I asked myself a question I had never dared to ask. When had my support stopped being love and become an expectation? Perhaps the shift had been gradual, a soft slope rather than a cliff, easy to slide down without noticing. After my husband, Arthur, died, I tried so hard to keep everyone together, to be useful, needed, necessary. I thought that being generous was the same as being appreciated. But the truth lay here in front of me, ink on paper. They didn't see my giving as love. They saw it as my duty. Maybe that's why Sarah talked about my comfort with such casual cruelty. In her mind, my money was simply a river that flowed through her home, and my comfort, my privacy, my dignity were stones along the bank she didn't mind stepping on. I closed the folder gently, as if it were something fragile. It wasn't. I was. I stood and walked to the back hallway closet, the one where I kept old coats and memories no one else wanted. On the top shelf, in a faded stationery box, I found the letters Daniel had sent me years ago. Before Sarah, before the distance, before entitlement grew like a vine between us. They were warm letters then, grateful, curious, full of promises. Promises he had long forgotten. I sat on the edge of my bed, holding the box, letting my fingers rest on the cardboard. I didn't cry. At my age, tears don't come easily anymore. Or maybe it's that I've learned to keep them where no one can take advantage of them. Instead, I whispered the truth into the quiet room, just to hear it spoken aloud. They don't love me. They love what I provide. The words didn't shatter me the way they once would have. They settled inside me like settling dust. Quiet. Final. A small click sounded from the kitchen, the refrigerator turning on, the only thing in this house that depended on me and gave something back in return. I rose slowly and put the folder back on the table. I wasn't ready for decisions yet, not fully, but for the first time the thought crossed my mind without fear. What if I stopped paying? What if their comfort ended before mine ever did? I turned off the kitchen light, leaving the folder open like a doorway to something new. Tomorrow, I thought. Tomorrow, I would count every payment and decide who truly deserved anything from me at all. The next morning, I woke before sunrise, the way older bones often do. Not suddenly, but with a slow awareness, like the body is remembering something the mind hasn't caught up to yet. I lay there, staring at the soft outline of the ceiling, listening to the house breathe. It's an old house, like me, with its creaks and sighs, but it has never once betrayed me. By the time I reached the kitchen, the sky outside had turned from charcoal to ash. The folder still lay open on the table, as if waiting. I almost closed it out of habit, but something in me resisted the old rhythm, the one where I cleaned up the mess first and questioned the pain last. Instead, I sat down and pulled the folder closer. I began counting slowly, carefully, line by line, like I used to reconcile ledgers in my bookkeeping days. Mortgage, insurance, gas, electricity, student loans, car payments, streaming services, a monthly delivery of organic skincare for Sarah, a premium grooming membership for their purebred dog, a dog I had never once been allowed to pet indoors. Every few minutes, I stopped, rubbed my thumb along the edge of the paper, and whispered the number under my breath. 27, 54, 91, 127. 127 channels through which my life, my security, my quiet retirement flowed into theirs. At 72, people assume you don't understand numbers, but I always did. And these numbers told a story far more honest than anything my son or daughter-in-law had said to me in years. When I finished, I kept my hand on the stack, grounding myself, the way you hold the arm of a chair before standing. I didn't need to recount. The total was not a mistake. For a moment, I heard Sarah's voice in my mind so clearly it felt like she was sitting across from me. You live more comfortably than you should at your age. I felt my jaw tighten, a rare thing for me. My face is usually soft, tired, patient. But that morning, something inside me shifted, like a door unlocking after years of rust. Comfortably. Her word, not mine.
I live in an old house with mismatched dishes and a car that rattles when it's cold. My furniture is older than Daniel's marriage. My clothes last me decades because I mend them myself when the seams give in. My only indulgence is a better brand of tea I buy when it's on sale. If this is comfort, then what was their life? Their vacations, their renovations, their luxuries disguised as necessities? I stood up to heat water for tea, but my hand strayed toward the window. Across the quiet street, the neighbor's house glowed with warm yellow light. A young couple lived there. They waved at me sometimes. They seemed kind, but even kindness is something I've learned to be careful with. You can't spend it. You can't eat it. And you certainly can't count on it when you need someone to hold your hand in a hospital. The kettle clicked. I poured hot water into my mug, the steam drifting upward like a sigh. When I sat down again, my back cracked softly, the body's reminder that time moves, whether or not we're ready for it. That was when my phone buzzed. A message from Sarah.
Helen, Daniel, and I talked last night. We think it's best if you don't drop by unannounced anymore. Unannounced? I had been invited and then dismissed. Now I was being rebranded as an intruder. Another message followed immediately, as if she were delivering a 1-2 blow. We're under a lot of stress. Please stop making things uncomfortable. Uncomfortable. That word again, as if my simply existing caused tension in the beams of their perfect little house. I didn't answer, not because I didn't have words. I had plenty, but because they wouldn't have changed anything. They never did. Instead, I turned the folder toward me again, and this time, I didn't just see transactions. I saw something else, something I hadn't allowed myself to recognize. Evidence, proof of a pattern, a record of a one-way love. There's a moment in every woman's life when silence feels heavier than truth. Mine arrived with the morning sun. I pushed the folder aside and reached for a notebook I hadn't used in years. The cover was worn, the pages slightly yellowed, but it still opened easily, unlike so many conversations in my family. At the top of the first clean page, with a hand steadier than I expected, I wrote, "What I give, what I lose, what I keep." Below it, I drew 3 columns. The first filled quickly: money, time, presence, forgiveness. The second filled just as fast: dignity, rest, my own comfort, my peace. The third column stayed nearly empty. That emptiness was the first honest moment I had with myself in a long time. I closed the notebook softly. The kitchen felt colder suddenly. Or maybe I was just noticing the chill that had been there all along. I didn't know yet what I would do. Not fully, not out loud, but I felt something take root inside me. Small, steady, unmistakable. A beginning. And beginnings at my age are not to be wasted.
My granddaughter, Chloe, showed up that afternoon without warning, though with her, the word never carried the sting it did when Sarah used it. With Chloe, unannounced meant the opposite of intrusion. It meant someone still remembered I existed without needing something from me. I heard her footsteps on the porch before I saw her, lighter than Daniel's, quicker than Sarah's, always a little rushed, as though life urged her forward faster than her thoughts could catch up. When I opened the door, she stood there clutching a stack of art history textbooks against her chest, cheeks flushed from the autumn cold. "Grandma," she said, and her face softened in relief. "Thank goodness you're home." As if I ran marathons in my spare time. I answered with a real smile, stepping aside to let her in. "Always for you."
She laughed, a warm, genuine sound that filled the small foyer. I had forgotten how good laughter sounds when it isn't polished for an audience. Chloe toed off her boots the same way she'd done since she was 12 when she decided grown-up courtesy was too stiff, and my house didn't deserve any performance. She always said my house felt like a refuge, a place where no one judged her messy bun or her chipped nail polish. She followed me into the kitchen and sat at the table, dropping her books with a soft thud. "I brought you banana muffins," she said, lifting a small paper bag. "I baked them at midnight. Don't judge the shape. The flavor is negotiable." I poured tea for both of us, and the warmth of her presence settled into the room like sunlight on cold wood. For a moment, I simply watched her. Her hair in a loose knot, a pencil stuck behind her ear, a smudge of charcoal on her thumb. 19 years old, but already wiser than her parents in all the places that mattered. She took a sip of tea and set the cup down with deliberate care before speaking. She said, "I saw the messages." She left her phone on the counter. I shouldn't have looked, but "You're not responsible for their words," I said. Chloe exhaled, her shoulders softening the way they always did when she felt safe enough to be honest. She said, "They were talking about you, saying you take things personally, that you make everything complicated. And Mom said—" She hesitated, then met my eyes. She said she should learn to live with less. People her age don't need that much comfort. There it was, the sentence that had lodged itself inside me like a splinter long before Chloe repeated it. Hearing it from her, gently, hesitantly, somehow made it cut deeper. I sat down across from her. "I know. I've heard it before."
Chloe shook her head, her eyes glistening with a hurt that wasn't even hers. "It's cruel, and it isn't true. You know that, right?" I didn't answer immediately. At my age, truth takes a moment to settle. Finally, I said, "Comfort is not something we earn by being young. It's something we deserve by being human." She reached across the table and took my hand. Her fingers were warm, steady. She squeezed gently, the way her grandfather used to squeeze mine when he wanted me to feel his conviction rather than hear it. "They don't see what you do, everything you've paid for, everything you've held together." A bitter little smile lifted the corner of my mouth. "They see it. They just don't want to acknowledge it. Acknowledgement makes people feel indebted." Chloe frowned. "That's wrong." "It may be wrong, but it's how they've chosen to live. And I've allowed it." The words felt like pulling a splinter out of skin, painful but relieving once freed. Chloe let out a shuddered breath. "Dad says he's under pressure, that they have responsibilities, but I don't understand why the weight always falls on you." "Because I've made it easy for them, too easy." She looked down at her hands, twisting a silver ring around her finger. "I hate that they treat you this way." I brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. "Don't carry my burdens on your shoulders, sweetheart. That's how women in our family break themselves, trying to hold pain that isn't theirs." She nodded, but her eyes told me she still felt it deeply. We sat in silence for a while, not the heavy kind that suffocates, but the gentle kind that holds two people together without needing words. Finally, Chloe spoke softly. "Grandma, what are you going to do?" I looked at her. really looked at the only person in that family who visited because she wanted to, not because she needed something. At the girl who came from my stories, not my savings. At the one heart still uncorrupted by convenience. And a quiet determination settled into my chest, firm as a hand pressing against my back. I don't know everything yet, I said, but I know what I can't keep doing. Chloe waited, breath held. I can't keep paying for a life that leaves no space for me in it. Her eyes softened. Good. A simple word, but from her it felt like permission. Permission to claim the years I still had left. We finished our tea. When she stood to leave, she hugged me tighter than usual. Her hair smelled faintly of peppermint shampoo. For a moment, I let myself linger in that embrace. The warmth, the sincerity, the rare and precious feeling of being wanted. Whatever you decide, Chloe whispered against my shoulder, I'm with you. I watched her walk down the path, her shoulders straight, her steps sure. When the door closed behind her, the house didn't feel empty. It felt ready.
I barely slept that night, not from anger. Anger burns hot and quick, and I am too old for fires that leave only ashes. No, what kept me awake was clarity. A quiet, steady kind of clarity, like the moment fog lifts and you finally see the road you've been walking on for years. By morning, I had made my decision. The bank opened at 9. I arrived at 8:45. The autumn air in downtown Oakwood was sharp. Carrying the smell of wet leaves and impending rain, I stood outside the glass doors of First Regional Bank, my breath fogging faintly in the chill. I wasn't nervous, not exactly, but there's a particular tremor that comes when a woman stops being obedient. Even at 72, the body remembers what it means to shift from endurance to action. At 9 sharp, the manager, Linda Chen, saw me through the glass and personally unlocked the door. She'd handled my account since Arthur died. She'd been there when I buried him, when I sold the bigger house we couldn't manage, when I opened the savings line Daniel now treated as an extension of his wallet. She knew me. More importantly, she remembered when people still respected age instead of exploiting it. "Helen," she said, her expression warm but professional, "what a surprise! Come on back." I followed her to her tidy office. The door clicked shut with a softness that felt like permission. "I need to cancel every automatic payment and transfer tied to my account," I said without preamble. "Every single one." Linda blinked, not in judgment, but in careful understanding. "That's a significant change. You have quite a few recurring arrangements." 127, I said. "I counted yesterday." She nodded slowly, turning to her computer. The tapping of keys filled the room. I watched her work, methodical, precise, not once questioning me the way my family always did. After a few minutes, she glanced at me. "Some of these are substantial, Helen. The mortgage payment for the Hillsborough property alone," I said, without preamble. "Every single one." She gave a single definitive nod. "Understood." I felt myself exhale. Not relief, not sadness, something steadier, resolution. When she finished, she printed a stack of documents.
The signatures felt almost ceremonial, each one a quiet reclaiming of my own life. With every stroke of the pen, something loosened in my shoulders, something that had been knotted for far too long. When the last page was signed, I closed the folder gently. "There's one more thing," I said. "I need to revoke the financial power of attorney I gave to my son." For the first time, a flicker of something like respect crossed Linda's face. "Of course, we can process that today as well." As she prepared the final documents, I let my gaze drift to the window. Outside, people rushed to work, phones pressed to their ears, chasing things they believed mattered. And here I was, at 72, quietly unspooling the web I had tied myself into. When everything was done, Linda walked me to the door. "You've made brave decisions today," she said softly. "No, I've made overdue ones." The walk to my car felt different, not freer, not yet, but steadier, as if each step belonged to me in a way it hadn't in years. My hands had stopped trembling. There was still one more errand. I drove to the modest brick building where my lawyer, Martin Briggs, kept his office. He'd known Arthur. He'd written our first will. He was one of the few people who didn't treat me like a fragile vase or an expired coupon. "Helen," he said, rising to shake my hand, "it's been a while. What can I do for you?" "I need to change my will and establish a new trust," I said. He leaned back, steepling his fingers. "All right, tell me what's happened." I gave him the condensed version, the uninvitation, the payments, the entitlement, the word uncomfortable. He listened without interruption, his expression growing graver. When I finished, he said, "You want to protect your assets." "I want to protect myself," I corrected. "And I want Chloe, the only one who treats me like a person, to inherit what I've built safely, out of her parents' reach." Martin nodded. "Then we'll create an irrevocable living trust in Chloe's name. We'll update the will accordingly. It will be airtight." We worked through the paperwork for an hour. He didn't ask if I was sure. He didn't suggest I might regret it. He treated my decisions with the gravity they deserved. When I signed the final page, the pen felt cool and decisive in my hand. Helen Margaret Vance. One signature. 40 years of silent sacrifice shifting back into my control. Martin gathered the documents. "You're doing the right thing, Helen. Not the easy thing, the right thing." I left his office as the first drops of rain began to fall. I didn't hurry. Let the rain come. I was dry. I was sheltered. I was, for the first time in decades, secure in a future of my own making. The storm arrived in my phone, not the sky. It started that evening, a text from Daniel. "Mom, the mortgage payment bounced. What's going on?" Then another. "The utilities too. Is there a problem with your account?" Then a call. I let it go to voicemail. Then Sarah. "Helen, we're getting decline notifications. This is serious. Call Daniel." I silenced my phone. I made a pot of soup. I listened to the rain patter against the windows. The quiet of my home was a balm. The next morning, the onslaught continued. Missed calls, voicemails, frantic texts growing increasingly unhinged. "Mom, answer me. The insurance is overdue. This isn't funny. What did you do?" Around noon, my landline rang. I let it. 7 rings, then silence. I sat in my armchair, a book in my lap, and felt nothing. No guilt, no fear, only a profound, peaceful certainty. Let them panic. Let them feel the ground shift beneath the life I had kept propped up. Martin showed up at my door just after 6, his car screeching to a halt in the gravel. He didn't knock, he pounded. I opened the door. He stood there, tie askew, hair disheveled, face flushed with fury and fear. "What is going on?" he demanded, pushing past me.
"Hello, Daniel," I said, closing the door calmly. He spun around. "The payments! Everything is bouncing. The bank says the credit line is closed. Did you close it?" "Yes." He stared at me as if I'd spoken another language. Why?" "Because it was my money, my security, not yours." His anger faltered, replaced by a dawning, terrifying comprehension. "Mom, we depend on that. We have bills, the house, the cars, Chloe's tuition." "You have jobs," I said quietly. "You have incomes. You'll manage." "We can't," he shouted, the sound raw in my quiet living room. "You don't understand. We're stretched. We have obligations. You can't just pull the rug out." "I didn't pull the rug, Daniel. I simply took back the rug you were standing on. It was always mine." He paced, running his hands through his hair. This is cruel. You're punishing us." "No," I said, my voice even. "I'm ceasing to be punished by you. There's a difference." He stopped, breathing heavily. "What do you want? An apology? For the dinner? Fine, I'm sorry. Is that what you want?" "It's not about the dinner. It's about a lifetime of being your convenience, your wallet with a heartbeat. I'm retiring from that position." He looked at me then, truly looked, and I saw the moment the realization hit him. The woman in front of him was not the pliable, guilt-ridden mother he knew. She was someone else, someone who could not be moved. His shoulders slumped. The fight drained out of him, leaving a hollow exhaustion. "What are we supposed to do?" "You'll figure it out," I said, not unkindly. "You're a grown man. It's time you started living like one." He left without another word, a defeated silhouette in the rainy dusk. Sarah came the next day, armed with icy calculation instead of panic. She tried reason, then guilt, then veiled threats about family reputation and what people will think. I listened until she ran out of tactics. Then I said, "Sarah, you told me to live less comfortably. Consider this my effort to take your advice. You should take your own. You'll find it's uncomfortable." She left, white-faced and silent. The fallout was swift. Within a week, I heard through Chloe that they'd taken loans against their cars, that they'd pulled Chloe from her expensive extracurriculars, that the necessary landscaper and housekeeper were let go. The illusion was crumbling, and they were scrambling in the rubble. Through it all, Chloe was my anchor. She came by nearly every day, not to talk about her parents, but to be with me. She brought sketches, playlists, stories about her friends. Her loyalty was a quiet, fierce gift. One afternoon, weeks later, Daniel came again. This time he didn't pound. He knocked softly. He looked older, wearier, humbled. "Mom," he said, his voice thick, "can we talk?" I let him in. He didn't sit. He stood in the middle of the room, looking lost. "I'm sorry," he said. The words were quiet, stripped of performance. "Not just for the money, for everything, for making you feel small, for forgetting you were a person, not just Mom." I nodded, waiting. "I don't know if we can keep the house," he admitted, the confession costing him dearly. "We're selling the cars. Sarah's taken on more clients. I'm I'm trying. I know you are, I said. He met my eyes, his own red-rimmed. Do you hate me? No, Daniel. I don't have the energy for hate, but I also don't have any more money for you. That part of our relationship is over. He swallowed hard, nodding. I think I'm starting to understand what I did. Good, I said. Understanding is the first step to becoming a better man. I hope you take the next one. He left shortly after, the conversation having nowhere left to go. The door closed on a chapter of my life. This time the silence that followed was not heavy, but clean. Epilogue, 6 months later. I am sitting on my porch in Oakwood, a blanket over my lap, watching the first fireflies of early evening blink in the gathering dusk. The lemon verbena in my pot is thriving. Inside, a casserole Chloe helped me make is warming in the oven.
My life is small, but it is mine. Every quiet moment, every paid bill, every choice. Daniel and Sarah did not lose their house, though they had to take in a roommate, a young professor from the university, to afford it. They drive used cars, they budget. They argue, Chloe says, but about real things now, not just which luxury to purchase next. Daniel calls me every Sunday, not to ask for anything, just to talk. The conversations are awkward, stilted, but they are real. It's a start. Chloe is the light of my life. She's changed her major to social work. I want to help people who get forgotten, she told me. The trust Martin set up will ensure she graduates debt-free and has a foundation to build upon. She knows about it. She cried when I told her, "It's not for now. It's for your dreams. Promise me you'll dream big." I promise, Grandma. The folder marked family is in a filing cabinet now. I look at it sometimes, not with pain, but as a historical document, proof of a war I finally walked away from. People my age are told to simplify, to downsize, to make things easier for the next generation. But no one tells you that sometimes the greatest simplification is removing the burdens that were never yours to carry. The greatest gift you can give your family is not a blank check, but the example of a life lived with dignity. I am 72. I live comfortably, by my own definition. My comfort is a warm house, a full bookshelf, the love of a granddaughter who sees me, and the hard-won peace of a woman who finally chose herself. They told me to live less comfortably. Instead, I learned to live authentically. And in the end, that was the only comfort that ever truly mattered.